start the streaming. 1 second that I check that everything goes as it should. Yeah, perfect. We are live. Welcome, everybody. Good. So I'm going to start sharing the screen. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. So welcome to another .NET User Group Zurich session. Today it's about API versioning in ASP.NET 6 with Steven Giesel. And also we will see some cats. First, I'd like to give some special thanks to our sponsors offering solutions, Vivao for Texture, our location when we could meet in person, Impact Hub Zurich and Stanford Group, and also to our partners, Azure, Zurich User Group, .NET Central, .NET Day Switzerland, and Swiss Angular. Thank you very much. Who are we, apart from me? We are Paul, Michael, Nigel, Laurent, Fabian, and Mark Muller. And what do? We organize events from developers to share knowledge, get excitement, and learn a bit, and do some networking and beer and pizza. At least we were doing that in 2019 when we could still meet in person, at least in a safe way, right? What can you do to help us? If you want, you can follow us on Twitter at .NET Zurich or LinkedIn. We are pretty active there. You can search there for .NET-Zurich or join and share our meetup group, which if you are here, that means you probably have done that already. Tell your peers, your colleagues, help us grow, propose content and speakers, or set yourself for speaking if you have an interesting project. We'd like to have you. And yeah, we have a website, .NET-Zurich.ch. Today is about Steven. Steven, you can find him in linkedin.com/en/Steven-Giesel. You will not find him in Twitter. I don't know why, but he refuses to join the trend. Yeah, he's software engineer. You can tell us about that. He's an open source enthusiast, speaker. We had him several times, so he's a usual collaborator of the user group. We love having him. He's pretty fun. He likes to gain and share knowledge. And to share his insights, and he's quite reachable. And I learned that he also likes cats, right, Steven? He was a colleague of mine in when I was in Zühlke, a fantastic consulting company that I love, and I love the people there with all my heart. But yeah, had a great experience there, and we were there collaborating in internal, like kind of user group but private, and he's leading that kind of mini .NET user group there, right, Steven?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think it's great to have you on board, and the stage is completely yours.
Thank you very much for the beautiful introduction. I would now take over the screen. I see, oh, perfect. So as always, yeah, the normal question always at the beginning, it's like the attitude you have to have on a meeting. Can you see the screen? Is everything big enough for you? Please, if not, let me know. Or let Jose know and he lets me know, because sometimes I don't always pay attention to my other screen, which is there. Anyway, today's topic, API versioning in ASP.NET Core. Yeah, you can use it in 3.1, 5, and 6, but of course I will use the latest template to just stay up to date. Well, Jose gave already a good introduction about my person. I'm a software engineer, as he said, at Zühlke Engineering here in Zurich. Originally, I'm coming from Germany. I like normally the newest shit on the market, if you want to say it like that. So I'm big fan of Blazor. I have my own blog, which I let's say to 99.8%, I wrote in Blazor. Unfortunately, I had to use 0.2% in JavaScript. Hopefully this 0.2% can be eradicated in the next major version of .NET 7. But yeah, let's see. So yeah, if you want to contact me, I'm on LinkedIn, GitHub, yeah, Stack Overflow, spreading some knowledge there, hopefully. And yeah, I have my own blog. Reach out to me if you want to know. So what is today's topic about? It's about API versioning. And the first question in the room is, what is API versioning? So if we go just to a random Google search, what we get there is this beautiful quote: API versioning is the practice of transparently managing changes to your API. That sounds really great. And if we put it down in simple words, is we want to manage like major, AKA bring in changes to our API. Or in this particular case, what I want to show later, to our REST API. What are those major breaking changes, you might ask? This is, for example, if you change your response format from XML to JSON, then your consumer will have a bad time if he's not adopting this. Other one is if you add a new required property to your request object, as well as removing a property from the response. I guess your client will not necessarily like that if you just remove stuff he was pretty used to use. And of course, if you change property names, so you have name to full name or something like that. So your contract in any kind of way is somehow violated. This is the basic idea why we do versioning in general. Yeah, why should you care? Why should you have something like API versioning in the first place? What is the motivation behind that? And there's a, I don't know if it's not a bad example, but on the left side, you will see the distribution of Android versions. Unfortunately, Google does not publish those anymore. So this is kind of older. It's from 2020, if I'm not wrong. That's why you will not see Android 11 or Android 12. Anyway, the fact stays the same. You can see there are only 8% on the newest version, and the majority is at least 2 to 3 years behind in versions. And if you take this analogy to your personal projects or business projects, then you will see, okay, yeah, your users, they will not always go immediately to the latest version. And this can be hindering your development. So you're stuck kind of with supporting those old versions and also new versions for your new clients, both. So we have to find a mechanism. Sometimes even the business, once from the very beginning wants to support old versions or old interfaces. So if you have this from the beginning on, then why not? And sometimes it's a temporary solution. Just imagine you are in a transition phase, and right now you have to support 2 versions at a time. And we all know nothing is more permanent than a temporary solution. So yeah, this for sure, these overlapping time will be your permanent state, and therefore it might make sense to just manage that in some way or another. So one question arises: let's assume we have this requirement, or we have those states that people don't go to the latest version immediately. What happens if we do not update, or if we do not version our APIs? And on one side, of course, you will have an angry customer, at least because he's annoyed that something breaks. Maybe he's also very, sad because it's not working anymore. And if you have if you want to speak a bit technically about this, what happens is, for example, you can have a 400 bad request because whatever your request was doesn't fit anymore to the format of the server. What happens? Just imagine you will rename your endpoints, then you can get a not found because your customer, he still points to the old URL. Or what I showed you in the first slide, that you can change basically from XML to JSON. Yeah, if your customer or your client still uses XML, he will get a 4 or 6, not acceptable because the format does not just fit. Small side notes, I just basically stole those pictures from http cat/ and then your status code. Also, you have those funny status code like 421, I'm a teapot, all with cats, always good. Yeah. If you want to use them, it's a pretty nice site. So if you need more cat pictures, just head over to http:/the status code. And yeah, there's a wide variety of nice cat pictures. But there's also a small catch if we don't do it. When we do not version our stuff, we have less old code to maintain. This is always something you have to consider. API versioning is not for free. You have to at least have those multiple versions of a controller. You have multiple versions maybe of DTOs. And in the worst case, you have like services, multiple services involved. And of course, if you do not version those, then you have a cleaner code base. So yeah, consider always this. Is it worth to have versioning? It comes with a cost. What are you going to show us for versioning? Yep, technically speaking, it's a NuGet package from Microsoft itself, Microsoft.asp.NET Core MVC versioning. It brings all the stuff with it. It's a nice fancy package. I will show you some details, what to do, how to set it up. It's pretty straightforward. And yeah, there are alternatives. So you do not have to do this necessarily. There are other packages. I will just show this because I used this, and you will find also a lot of resources on Google / Stack Overflow. I think this is always nice if you have a lot of documentation, a lot of tutorials. It makes things very, very easy to follow. Now the question arises when I want to version, how should or how can we do versioning in general, and how it is also done with Git. I'm a pretty big fan of semantic versioning. So you have a major version, you have a minor version. And in theory, in semantic version, you also have a patch version. For public APIs, the first one are more important, so the major and minor version. Every time you have a breaking change, so what I showed earlier, those four, for example, XML to JSON, you have a new required property in your request, you remove a property from your response, something like that, then you would increase your major version to indicate, hey, it does not work anymore, whatever was on the version before. Then we also have the minor version. You would normally take this for how's the name says, non-major changes. So if it's not breaking, what do I mean with that? This could be you will add another endpoint. You will add an optional object in the response or optional parameter in the request, something which does not change any behavior, for example, if you do not provide this value. So normally you can stick with 1.0, 1.1. You do not need the patch version because the patch version is something very, very internal. For a consumer, it does not matter if you fix a bug. I mean, they always hope you fix bugs. I guess Jose can now, you can tell later how this works with bugs and feature requests. You're now expert with that, at least with the team of Meetup. Anyway, are there alternatives to versioning? Sure, there are alternatives. One alternative would be an API gateway. There's a bit more effort to do so, but it's a valid alternative. I know API gateways are also for other tasks. It's not only for versioning. They do way, way more than that, but still it's viable if you want to do that. You can also do this completely on your own. So you can just have those versions in hard-coded somewhere in your controller. This totally works. There's nothing wrong with it. You do not need another middleware, practically speaking. It just makes things easier, makes them a bit more predictable, and convenience. It's just about that, convenience. So enough talky. How about we go into the code and just do it by example. By the way, very beautiful cat, I have to say. It's a very beautiful cat. I like it. Okay, I just hit here my IDE and let's go here. I just have a new, let's just scroll it a bit. I hope you can read it. As a normal controller, it has not even an endpoint right now. So let's give it an endpoint. It's called user. Why not? That was a bit wrong. So my root is now user. And how about we just start that thing and I will go just to postman and enter the root. I guess it's pretty straightforward what will happen now. we just see some random UID and we see basically the name link. So let's go to my postman. I hope I can zoom. Please let me know if you cannot read this or if it's a bit too small, because then I will try to increase it. I know it works somehow, somewhere. Here, zoom in. Well, oh yeah, perfect. So this is my endpoint as shown in Writer. If I send the request to it, then it's not, oh, is it user? Oh, there's a version 1. Oops, I was a bit too fast. Oops. It's of course just user without anything, not version 1. And then we can see we have an ID, which is just a random UUID, and we have a username. In this case, I just called myself Link. For obvious references, I like Zelda. So I showed you this package, and yeah, then just let's install that package. So I will just go to the package manager, and yeah, let's straightforward insert that. I just copied it here, so I don't have to type because I'm lazy. So here, there's the MVC package version 5. So I will just put this into my app. And yeah, I will just recompile it and hit the postman again. So this is the package I talked about. This will do a lot of stuff. We will see in a few minutes what it is capable of. So I just will rebuild this and we will see the magic unfold. Let's let the magic unfold. So we're done. I will hit my postman. I will send the request. And yeah, I mean, nothing happens, huh? But now let's do the magic. So everything works as expected, as you would think. Now, this whole thing is just a middleware, and the middleware in ASP.NET is literally you just register as a service. And conveniently enough, Microsoft offers us everything in, practically speaking, one small additional extension method. So if you go to Builder Services, you have now the add API versioning. This is how you enable the whole middleware. So if I just now I have the middleware enabled. Let's rebuild this. Let's go to Postman again, and let's check what's going on. And I will send the request. And now, oopsala, I broke my own code. That's not that great. I have an error, API version unspecified. An API version is required, but wasn't specified. I mean, yes, that's true. So the first thing we did is we broke our API. So that's not that great, but this is, let's say, normal. And normally in the default configuration, you would have to provide the API version via query parameter. And we can do this. We can say, for example, API version is 1.0. So, and then we see everything is working. But this, of course, this is not what we want. If you would introduce this in the middle of somewhere, so your project is, I don't know, working since a year, we are still on version 1.10, and you would introduce this package, you would have now a major breaking change. And this is not what you want. So this nice package has you covered. You can go here and there's an overload which allows, practically speaking, to support some options. And this is where the majority of magic happens. This is all inside those options. And one of the options which is very nice is it can assume a default version for you. The default of this property is false, so I will set this to true. What does it mean? Well, if I do not specify in any way a version, it just always goes to the fallback. How I define the fallback, I will show a bit later. In default cases, it's always version 1.0. So let's do this again. Let's hit the postman request. I would like to use hot reload, but for some reason, maybe someone knows, my writer is not really capable of hot reload. It shows it can do that. And if I press apply changes, literally the old state is preserved. I do not know why. Anyway, let's go back. Here, API version 1, if I send the request, of course, this is what we expect. But if I completely remove that, so this is my old endpoint where formerly I had an exception. If I hit it now, it's working. This is what I want. So now even my old clients, if they don't provide me any version information, they still point to, internally speaking, to version 1.0, which is nice, because we don't want this. I don't want to introduce something to break everything. I wanted to introduce API versioning, so it's transparently managed. Okay, so I can just show you that there's also here the default version can be set here, where I can say new API version, and the version would be 1.0. Why this is handy, this I will show in a few minutes. Okay, that's nice. So we have some kind of a skeleton here, and time will pass, and we need a new controller. So we have new requirements. We have on the one side the requirement to still support the old user, so like this one here, which we have here. But business came with the requirement, hey, we need another user endpoint which returns another object. And now there are multiple ways to do that. So for sure, we need a new response DTO, for example. So in my case, I will use a response DTO, a new response DTO, and I also use a different controller, for example. And there are multiple versions. You can, in theory, call your controller version 1, version 2, version 3. That's there's multiple ways of doing that. Equally good, equally bad. This is really up to you how you do it. I saw also that you make a directory or you make a namespace where you call it version 1 or version 2. And then you, practically speaking, move that thing into version 1, and then you have it in a namespace. Obvious, a bit the downside would be that you might have done a lot of controllers. They have always the same name, but only the namespace is different. Really, it's up to you how you do that. I personally like the folder/namespace approach, but I can also see that you just call your controller user controller version 1. It's easier to detect, for example, in unit tests. Which objects are you? Yeah, what is your component under test or your service under test? So for now, I would leave everything in the user controller. So what I will show you is you don't have to have multiple controller. You can have multiple methods mapped to the same root. So we can see the root is on user controller level. Now I will create another HTTP GET. And we will call it, I don't know, public. For now, I call it just response DTO. I will change it in a second. And we call it get user version 2. Right now, we do not return anything because I will need a new DTO. And for the new DTO, let's create one. So we have, you see here, response DTO version 1. And I will just create a new class here, sorry. Response DTO version 2. Copy paste because I already have that. Yep, we can add this to Git. That's very lovely. So what's the change? Well, if we just check, we only have a username and a user ID. And in version 2, we, instead of just having the username, we distinguish between the first name and the last name. But obviously, this is a breaking change for the consumer. The consumer would only see on version 1 the user ID and not the 2 new fields or 2 new properties. Therefore, we have to version this. So now this is everything you have to do now is you can say which API version does your controller support. And in my case, it's 1.0 and 2.0 or 2.0. Now, here, let's take also version 2. Quickly, let's create a new object, response DTO. Thank you very much. My first name, Stephen. Last name, Giesel. And I have also, that's just a new tweet. So perfect. So now if you would start this, obviously this would break. There are even with this would break in the sense of I have now one root and there are 2 controllers or 2 endpoints listening to. So I have to specify which of my functions are mapped to which version. And there's also a nice attribute. So as you can see, you do everything via attributes. And I can say this is for version 1. And this endpoint here is for version 2. So, and this is 80% of the magic. So if you want to zoom out, if you want to enjoy, you know, after 30 minutes and you want to go out, I can totally understand this, because this is a lot of the magic happening behind the scenes is exactly in those attributes. If you know those attributes, you have the basic cases here, you are covered. You're just covered. So have a nice evening. No, I'm just kidding. I will show you a bit more advanced cases. Otherwise, it would be a bit boring. So let's go to Postman. So let's go here. I mean, I have the user here. This is pretty obvious. This is my version 1. No, that makes sense. Because let's go back to the code. In my setting, let's go here. I said, if I don't have any version specified, use the default version, and I set the default version here. I will show you in a second. I can also set this to 2.0, and then I get the new controller call, or the new object, the new response version 2 DTO. Wrong tab. So, but I want to use, wrong button, API version is 1.0. I mean, this makes sense. This is the same object, but now I use this is 2.0. And you can see first name is Stephen, last name is Giesel. So you see there's a complete new object created in version 2. That is pretty nice. This is what we want. So let me change this to 2.0, just for the sake of demonstration how this works. The idea is at some point in time, your default API version will also increment. So you will not always stay on a version 1.0. You will always go a bit higher, for example. So if your clients do update at a specific amount of time, you know, it's fine that they go to the newer version. So if I do not specify now any API version, we will have the same result, that I have the first name and the last name. You can see it here. I can also send it again. So you can see there's always a new UUID generated. And only now, if I'm always pressing the wrong button, only now if I specify the old version, we also have the content of the old version, as you can see here. I hope that makes sense. Oh, yeah, also small side note, if I use a totally random number which doesn't exist, of course, I will get an error. So you can see here, I ask for a version which does not exist. And yeah, the endpoint tells me, you know, your API version 3 is 0. We don't have anything. Bye-bye. That's unsupported. That's also nice. So you don't get, it's not like if it goes back to the fallback if it doesn't exist. Only if you really do not provide any version, then it assumes something, but not if you specify and does not exist, it goes back to the fallback. It does not do that. Anyway, that looks good to some point. And now you could argue, I don't like it. I don't like it in the query parameter, or I do not like API version here. That's not the way I normally do things. And also here, all the magic, or half of the magic, is in the attributes, and the other half of the magic is, practically speaking, inside your options. Your options have an API version reader. So this thing is responsible for just parsing somehow or somewhere the information, which version do you want to have. We saw in the default case, it's a query parameter called API version. But there are multiple other ways. So what we saw is the query string API version, and you can, for example, here also provide something. So you could say, I want to just set a V for version instead of API version, because maybe it's to propose too long, or you just like the style of having short letters instead of, you know, written out stuff. So if I go here, now I go API version 1, because my default is always pointing to 2. Let's go to 1. And we can see, oops, it's still going to 2. And that's the whole reason, is that I changed the query parameter. So if I use now V for version, I will go to version 1. I guess this is, yeah, straightforward to understand. Okay, I would quickly show all the other options there are. There is here, for example, header API version, and let's call it also API version. Why not? And as the name suggests, it's now in part of the header of the HTTP header. So it's not part of the query parameter anymore. It is part of the header. So if I go here, let's go for postman. We see if I provide version 1.0, it just does not work. Oh yeah. So sorry, that was my fault. I did prepare this and already. So I have version 1.0, but still I get the DTO of version 2. And as we specified, we want to use the API version in the header. Here it is. So in Postman, you can just go to the header section and you can specify whatever you want. And now I will take 2.0 and send the request. Then, yeah, we have also 2. And if I use 1, then we see the old format where we only have the username and the user ID instead of the full name in the sense of first name and last name. I guess this is also pretty straightforward. Now let's continue with a one which I'm personally not a big fan of, and this is the media type API version reader. And what it does is it checks, it's kind of a specialized header. So it's the accept header in this case. And what it does, it just checks after, I can show you here in the Postman. You can see this here because I did this once. So we have this accept here. Let's remove this for a second. You have the accept, which is application JSON. This is exactly what the default in ASP.NET is the response is JSON, and I accept JSON. And then you can, as an additional parameter, or practically speaking, as an additional parameter, you can define the API version here. I can see use cases. Personally, I'm just not a big fan of it, but this is just, how I feel. The accept header is not meant for versioning. It's which format do you expect, or do you accept in this case, and not which version do you accept. But yeah, Microsoft implemented this by default, so why not? If you need this for some weird reason, go for it. And then we have another good one, and this is I guess a lot of APIs do it in that way. This is the URL segment API version reader. So as you can see, this beautiful reader does not accept any string. And this is simply speaking because of a simple reason. For the URL segment, I have to change my root. So the root now is important. So if you go to the user controller, we can see my root is just user. But to make this work, I have to now specify where in the root is my version. And I can say, for example, here, I have here my version. So this is the special format of that package. So if you annotate it like that, it knows, okay, it's V, then there has to come a version tag, and it will transfer this to an API version. So if I write, I don't have to say it, I can just show you. It's way easier. So let's go to Postman. And instead of this, we remove this. I can make version 1 like that. You see, username, or I can make version 2 like that. You see, it's working perfectly. The only thing which now does not work anymore, and this is also considered a breaking major change, is if I do not specify the version, then you see I get a 404. This is a bit unfortunate, to be honest. So you would have to define a default version here, or you have to define at least another root which goes to your default version. It's a bit of a downside of this approach. If you start from the beginning like that, this is no issue. If you always, your first contact point with the client is exactly that, and there's no issue. You can just increase it or whatnot. This you can also use 2.0 is also working. There's no problem, but introducing it afterwards, at least you have to provide the fallback on your own. That's a small downside. Anyway, let's go back here. So these are the 4, let's say, standard ways of doing versioning. I can recap quickly. We have the query parameter string. We have just a plain header where you can define your key value pair somewhere in the header part of the HTTP request. You can put it in the accept part of your header, or you have it as an URL segment. So what you also can do in theory, if you want to, it allows you to combine multiple things. So you can also say, I want to API version reader, reader, and then you have combine here, and you could have multiple. So you can have the query string parameter where you allow V. You can, I don't know, you can have multiples. I mean, I guess it's self-explanatory. I can make, for example, also 2 of them. One is V and one is API version if I want. It's no problem. You can do that. If it makes sense or not, it's up to you. So this thing will just, do combine. I guess it's also pretty straightforward. So instead of, oh, of course, now I messed up because this root is, of course, still wrong. I'm not using the URL segment, so I just need user. Otherwise, no one will parse that API version for me. So let's remove this for the time being. So yeah, I can do now. I can say the version is 1.0, or I can also say API version, because this is what I defined in my combine. As you can see, it works like a charm. Here, let's go back here, just that you see it again. So what I allowed is I have two version reader attached. One is just listening to the query string, or both are listening to the query string. One is just checking for V, the other one is checking for API version. Well, pretty convenient, isn't it though? Okay. Now you know 95% of the stuff you need every day. Now let's come to the rest of those 5% which are left. And we can do two things. One thing is, which is always very helpful, is you can say, I want to report API versions. So what does that do? Well, let's go again. And you can see in the header, in the response header, let's set the request. And here in the header, you can say, you can see API supported versions. And it will show you all the versions which are supported by that endpoint. So I can also take this away. By the way, it doesn't matter. If you hit the endpoint where multiple map2 or API versions are declared as an attribute, you will see them here. So that is super nice, at least in, yeah, it's nice. Very nice. Okay, there is also, that's maybe also good to know, you can declare API versions as deprecated. Well, what does that do? There are two things. One is, because of the report API version, you will see that the header will change a bit. So your response header will look slightly different than in the way before. So we can see here, API supported versions is 1.0 and 2.0. And if I just hit this now, we can see, okay, the supported version is now only 2.0. And we have a deprecated version. So it's a nice way of transparently communicating to your client which version do we allow and which versions are deprecated. So they will go out of service at some point in the close future. Yes, exactly. So that is kind of a lot of magic. Well, not a lot of magic. This is, it's a very nice way of versioning your API. And I know when it comes to versioning and REST API, one thing a lot of people are using is Swagger. And here, this package is where it does not shine very much. So to enable Swagger is really, really pain. I can say that. It's not really well working. The integration is bad, to say the least. There are ways, there are multiple ways of enabling Swagger. So let's try together. I mean, our goal is simple. For example, we have API version 1, which is deprecated, and we have API version 2. In the Swagger UI, I want to see all the versions, and I also want to know that version 1.0 is deprecated. So let's try this. First, let's go to the program. And what we can do here is, we can just simply add Swagger. So this would be a good start. So let's go and say services. And then we add Swagger. I already installed, by the way, this is the default in ASP.NET 6, the Swagger package. So the you can see it here. I hope you can see that. Swashbuckler ASP.NET Core is already installed. There's nothing you have to do, at least from the template. It's already there.
Steven.
Yes.
One question. Is this the reason why you prefer to use the version in the path? Because then you don't have any problem with Swagger, or
Swagger is anyway hard to deal with. You will see in a second. So it's just not. Oh wait, I can open just the chat. I can. Oh no. So sorry. Can you rephrase your question?
Yes, it is the reason, because a bit before you mentioned that you prefer to put the version in the path.
Mhm.
And now you're showing us a bit on this API version reader to differentiate
Mhm.
different versions or to put it with different text that indicate that what follows is a version, right?
Mhm.
So I was wondering if that was the reason why you like it to have the version in the path.
No, no, no. That has nothing to do with, good question, but it has nothing to do with Swagger or not.
Okay.
It's anyway a pain. Let's say it like that. The problem is that you have multiple endpoints, or you have multiple functions mapped to the same endpoint, and Swagger just has problems with that, which makes sense. If in real life you have a controller or you have two controllers with the same root, I mean, at some point it's a bit, what should Swagger do? Which
All
one
right.
is the right one?
Thanks.
Yep. I will show here quickly what's the problem. So the default is you add it to your middleware at Swagger, and for the app, we just create the Swagger and Swagger UI. So let's quickly hit the console localhost 5000 Swagger, and then we can see if this thing is built. Yeah, we get a HTTP 500. So if I just check, let's zoom this a bit in. So we can see this works partially. So he finds something, but not really everything. And more or less, I have an error, so that's not really great. If I look into the Swagger JSON, so when he tries to create this thing, you can basically see that he tells me, well, there are multiple actions for the same root. So this is not working. You can see it here, get user. So yeah, he has problems with that. And now I just show you one way of working around that whole behavior. And to do so, we have to add another package also provided by Microsoft. It's practically speaking almost the same package as I used before. It's not the versioning, it's the API Explorer, which exposes a bit the meta information. So this one, I'll just install that here. And there I can basically say, okay, when the middleware is installed, here, I don't know, somewhere here if I want, I can say add versioned API Explorer, and then I can just define the version. So as a group name, it will written be version 1, version 2, or 2.1, 2 point something, something, depending on what I have. So let's try this. It would be nice if it is working now. So let's go. Let's look what our endpoint is doing. Let's go first to the index HTML, and ooh, at least that is working. You see, API version is required property, which is not totally true, but it is somehow working. But as you can see here, it's only picking up the definition for version 1 and not for version 2. Not that great. And to get around this, I will quickly copy paste a whole bunch of codes, and I will explain it a bit in detail. So where put this? Let's put this here. Let's add a new file, and we need configure, for example, the Swagger options. So we can give Swagger some options. So this, yeah, I don't need this now. Thank you very much. So I copy pasted here a lot of stuff. And what I need basically is we can see a package here, the API version description provider. This comes from the package I installed earlier. So this is the API Explorer here on the left. I hope you can see this, which is solely responsible for exposing my meta information so I can grab them later. And we can see here there's a configure. It's just the interface of the configured name options, which is provided by the Microsoft dependency injection. Just has these two overloads. But as you can see, it doesn't matter in which context I am. I always use this one. And what I do here is pretty simple. I go through every version descriptor, which is exposed thanks to my API Explorer. And I create a new open API info. So you can have a title. Then I have this version. And then you have the small description if this is, for example, deprecated. This is a very simple approach of dealing with that. There are other versions, I can tell you. Another one is you can work with the XML documentation. So you can, in theory, also work with this one that you write something here. If you hit Google, you will find a lot of information about that. That's why I also like this package in general, because you do not have to reinvent the wheel. Even though this is a bit, let's say, like it's a bit crappy to have to deal with such stuff, but it is working. So let's. Oh yeah, I never wait. Of course, this is not working. I just added this file, but I never added to the dependency injection. So for sure, this will not work. Let me add this real quick here. I have my builder services and then configure option, which is then taken by Swagger. Configure options. Then how did I name it? Configure Swagger options. Swagger options. Swagger options. Yeah, exactly that beautiful thing. So what is red here? There's no arrow. Okay. Anyway, good. Now Swagger should pick up all the right information. So let's go back. Let's press Control Reload, and you can see, oh, it's not working as expected. Let me just check here if the version 2 is there. Oh, that's funny. It is there, but he doesn't pick it up as I expected. So as you can see, the Swagger JSON picks it up, as we can see here, without any problem. We can see the whole JSON. There's a first name, last name, and user ID. And if I go to version 1, you can see that's only a username, and that's all. But I don't know right now why the. Normally, you should have the definition here because there is a Swagger or version 2 Swagger JSON, so he should pick that up, but he does not for some weird reason. Mysterious. Yeah, I have to check why it is not working as expected. But yeah. Anyway. For some weird reason, my Explorer is not working, but at least the files itself, they are generated as you would expect them to be generated without any problem. Yeah, so this is, for me at least, a major drawback of using this package. Yeah, so, but also to be, yeah, if you would do it on your own. So what I meant initially is you don't necessarily need this package. If you have a new controller, you can just have the root like version 1 user, and then you have another controller way called version 2. Here, Swagger would of course work out of the box because not multiple controllers are mapped to the same endpoint. But unfortunately, it is how it is. Anyway, that sums it up pretty well. I want to inspect later, maybe not now because I don't know why it's not working, or what's the problem here of the API Explorer, or why it's not showing in the UI, because it should. But I hope I could give you a small tour how to do versioning and what this beautiful package is providing for you. Yeah, if you have any questions, please let me know. I am pretty much through, and I hope I could give you a small introduction to the whole world of versioning in REST API. Are there any questions?
Yes, thank you very much, Stephen. It was very interesting. I just would wonder having any version on the root without specifying this default version could somehow be a problem, especially if you later start changing it. I mean, you could just remain version 1.0 on the default path, but wouldn't be better to just always have an API version, then you are able to change it in past, a bit later.
What do you mean with, you mean like in retrospective? So the client is using versioning right now? We already have versioning? Or we introduce versioning?
The normal case is that you start with your project without having any version.
Yes.
And then you come to the point, we have breaking changes, we need to introduce, and then, now what do we have to do now? So changing the existing path to a new version would break any existing clients.
Yes.
So the only option is to leave it in version 1.0, for example, and add an additional version on another path or properties or whatever.
Yeah.
So so having a default version other than 1.0 usually doesn't make sense for me.
Yeah, that's true. If you start without versioning, yeah, that's true. You would not go to 0. I mean, besides, let's say, you really come to the point where you can say, okay, my version is obsolete since 1 year or whatnot, I don't know. And then you really can remove the controller.
Yeah, then you can remove everything, of course, yes.
Exactly. Then you could argue, okay, let's set our default version 1 higher. But yes, I'm totally on your side. It doesn't, I mean, my scenario here is a bit far from reality. Normally, you're right. You would set this version to 1.0. This is what you do. Yeah, absolutely.
Would you put this example code on a Git repository so we can see it?
I can, yes. I will put this, I guess I will put this in the slides. Maybe I make 2 branches, like what was the default and how does it look afterwards? And I will put the GitHub repository. I mean, it is right now on GitHub, but not the latest version because I didn't push it until now. So API versioning. But yeah, I guess this one already, let me just check. Yeah, this is the old one. You can use this. I can send the link around. This is for ASP.NET 5. I will update the examples. I will make a new branch for basically the new template of ASP.NET Core 6. So let me just put this in the chat if you want. I get that would be easy. Maybe you need a Swagger endpoint for each description from the front. Yeah, I played around with multiple approaches. It is Swagger and API version is just a bit pain in the ass, to be honest. Unfortunately, Microsoft didn't provide a nice package to automate that. Yeah, there's really a way with the Swagger endpoint with the description. It was more boilerplate code. This version I took here is the least amount of code I could find to make it work. Let's say it like that. Maybe you can even boil it down a bit less. Multiple API versions, Swagger config. Oh, maybe I can try that. Yeah, this looks also good. Yeah, it does kind of the same, huh? You also go through with the API Explorer and look for every API description. Yeah. Yep. Thank you. That could very well work. So sorry if you don't know what I'm talking about in chat. There's another solution to the problem. Yes, I will. Let me just quickly. Yeah. So this is fine. Am I on a branch right now? I hope so. I will push this for version 6. Let me just also call that .NET 6. Oh, not -n, -b. And let's add all the code. So yeah. And then you can play around with all the stuff. Oops, there it is.
Could you instruct it to always go to the latest version or the latest minor version since it's not breaking?
Yes, the latest minor version, I guess, is a very good practice. I mean, I don't see any issue with it. Besides, you have some. Yeah, I guess we have to distinguish between the API version, for example, 2 to 2.1 versus what does your business do with 2 to 2.1. If you, of course, have some weird business or domain processes which would change dramatically, I would not advise, but normally, yes, just go for it as long as it doesn't break. Yes.
Okay, but could you automate it? I mean, could you enter a single line of code to advise it to change the latest minor or latest major, whatever?
That is a good question. And to be honest, I do not know. I guess there's no way of saying, or at least I'm not sure. I mean, there's a parse. You could argue if you have something in the DI container, so you can put in whatever you want here. This is a string. But at some point you have to define. Either you could find a way via attributes, but also then just imagine you will have multiple controllers. And it's very unlikely that all of them have to be always on version or available on version 2.1, 2.0, 1.1, and 1.0. So I guess it's kind of hard to do. You have to find a common denominator between all of them.
Okay. Yeah, well, it would be cool if you could say search the latest version for this specific the specific controller, and then just use the latest. Yeah, maybe it doesn't cooperate when you have like 2.3 on the one controller and 2.8 on the other or something. But yeah.
Well, you could, in theory, do that. I mean, you can always type off and then use a controller via reflection. You get all the attributes. From the attribute, you look for the map to, how's it called? Either map to API version or the API version here, depending on how you do it. And from there, I mean, this has a property name, but I do not know if you really want to go with reflection. But yeah, it would be nice if there would be an option. This would be one possible solution, depending on your case, if you want to do reflection.
Okay, rather not. But thank you.
Yeah. Okay, if there are not any questions, I would stop sharing. Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Stephen. So now we are going to stop the live stream, and yeah.